All right, thank you so much for joining us today. Here we have two very successful mobility entrepreneurs. We have Dave Waiser, who is the founder and CEO of Get, and Uri Levine, who is the founder and CEO of Waiser, which famously exited to Google for over $1 billion back in 2013. So we're here today to talk about the future of transportation. But first, I wanted to ask you, did you know that Tel Aviv has a traffic problem?
You know, I hate traffic so much, and this is why I'm here with my bicycle. And it turns out that nearly every city in the world, they tend to believe that their traffic jams are the most severe there are. And some of them are actually right, but Tel Aviv is a nightmare.
Right. So what do you think the problems entrepreneurs should be trying to solve around traffic are?
Good morning. I think there is an urban legend that says that soon we will have AV vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and that will change how we move around, and definitely it will help with the traffic. The reality is maybe that will be same amount of miles driven by people. We still move from A to B, and we will be moving it from A to B with AVs. The biggest change that will happen is actually around parking. And that's what might change the cities in the most dramatic way. And I think specifically for Tel Aviv, where we have traffic but equally parking issues, it will help a lot. As long as we have parking issues, that would help and move people from their own cars to actually shared transportation, such as taxis or any other means, bikes and any other. But parking, I guess, today is the biggest reason why people shift from their own car to shared cars.
Sure, yeah. And so I know that you wanted to speak a little bit about autonomous vehicles and traffic and whether or not AVs could actually solve that problem or potentially make it worse. And I know we do have some slides. Could we cue those up? We'll wait a minute.
Okay, so you know, just a point of view on what does traffic jam means, right? And what we have in this picture, it looks like a traffic jam, right? So 5 lanes of traffic, and this is really traffic jams that we are familiar with, right? But in reality, what we have here is exactly 200 people sitting in 177 vehicles. And if I will do a little bit of a magic and just remove the cars and leave the people in place, this is what we have. Right? I can actually take those people and fit them into 3 buses. This is it, right? So the nature of the beast of traffic jams is the ratio between number of passengers to number of vehicles. And right now in the US, this number is 1.1. If we actually take this number and make it 1.2 people per vehicle, we remove traffic jams. Right? Now we can do that through public transportation, we can do that through carpool, we can do that through bicycles. It doesn't matter how we do that, but if we do that, we actually get rid of traffic jams. Now, if you think that autonomous vehicles is a solution for that, then in reality, this is what we're going to have, right? So 200 people in 500 vehicles, because some of those vehicles are going to be empty. Not only that they're going to be empty, the reality is that when there are more autonomous vehicles, parking garages will disappear, right? Cost of operation of the vehicle will be reduced dramatically because there is no driver there. And so many of those cars, they will have no place to go, right? So they will simply go around. And traffic jams will become even more severe than they are today. And if we don't do anything about it, that's the trajectory of where we're at. Now, when we started Waiser in 2007, we thought we're going to help drivers to avoid traffic jams. And you look at traffic jams today, 10 years later, and they're more severe than they were 10 years ago. So the reality is that the problem of traffic jam is still there.
Right. And so along the lines of that, when we're talking about AVs, there is going to be a point in time in the future where we have autonomous vehicles and human drivers on the road. So undoubtedly, there are going to be some situations or scenarios that arise when fatal collisions need to be avoided. But how do we, knowing that technology, robots, and humans are on the road, how do we approach those situations? Who makes the ethical decisions around autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, I think it's, ironically, today we're afraid of AVs being on the road because we're afraid of those situations, and there will be casualties, and it will be terrible. And that what will somehow will slow down the introduction of AVs. But the irony is that even today, and definitely by the time that AV will be more commercially available, the security aspect or safety aspect of AV will be much better than the human one. And there is a thesis that says that 10 years after the AV will be commercially available on the road, I believe the humans will be more prohibited from the driving in a way that still leaves you a freedom, but it will be the insurance that will be so high for us to drive, and I believe that will be the shift point. But today, it's really the irony that we are afraid of the new technology. And most people, actually, when you ask people about AVs, most will tell that they are looking forward to ride such a vehicle, but very much afraid of crossing the road when such vehicle is coming. So it will take time of adoption.
So who's responsible when something happens? Should it be a government-led initiative, or is it the company like Uber or Lyft?
You know, I think that this is maybe a question that we deal with it today, but it will become very irrelevant, right? So today, last year, we, the drivers, killed 1.2 million people on the road. And, you know, imagine 50 years down the road, when there are merely just autonomous vehicles, this number is going to be much closer to zero. Sorry. So the key question is not whether or not we will get used to that, right? So we, the people, are very adjustable, right? We had the first iPhone 10 years ago, and if we will have a time machine, and I will send you back 10 years into the past, you will not even survive without the smartphones that we have today, right? Or without the Get service or the Uber service or Waiser or many other services that were created. Once this revolution is complete, we will not believe that we used to drive cars ourselves. And during the period of time, it's very easy to address that, right? Dedicated lanes. You enable dedicated lanes, and you call the autonomous vehicles sort of part of the public transportation system, and you enable that to move faster and much more efficient than anything else, and people will stop using their cars.
Sure, yeah. Well, so let's talk about startups too. Let's talk about mobility startups in Tel Aviv, where we are now. What are the biggest opportunities for them?
I think historically, Israel obviously has a very tiny consumer market. And historically, companies here are great in building technologies that from day one are global. And that's what built the startup arena. Most of the companies you see public today are the ones that do technology that embedded, semiconductor, telecom, security, anything that you can export and be global from day one. That's opportunity from one hand and a challenge from the other, because we do not have many consumer companies. And for example, while building Get, I think one of the things we are excited about is actually building up that knowledge and being an example and build up a new talent that will have an experience building consumer mobility at scale, actually build in Israel. And that's, there are very few companies, Waiser and Get has actually started with ambitious plan to go out and then actually build a consumer company. I think it is ridiculous when you start it from Israel, and it's very ambitious. And I think we understand that well, and that's what actually drives us, how you build a company, how you build this experience and expertise in Israel, and therefore create a new line of startups that will do same going forward.
Sure. So if you were going to start another company right now, what would you do?
You know, I left Waiser just after the acquisition, and since then I'm involved in 8 different startups that I founded, most of them, and I keep on building startups. And it's all about finding a problem, a big problem, something that it's worth solving, that the world will become a better place if you do that. And then try to figure out, okay, so who actually have this problem, right? If I would end up to be the only person on the planet with this problem, then shrink is much cheaper than building a startup. But if a lot of people would have that, then I will try to figure out how can I build it. And I have startups that deals with financial fees, which is huge secret in the US, $600 billion of financial fees every year. And the scary part that people don't even know that they're paying them, right? And when I was young, my dad once told me that if you don't know how much you're paying, then you're paying too much, right? With Angie that deals with the frustrations of going to the mechanic, and because this is one of the places that we go there and we don't know what's going on, right? So we feel completely helpless there. So it's an app that connects to the car computer, doing the diagnostics for you, telling you what's wrong, and then asking mechanics to quote to repair that. And of course, move it in the mobility space that is actually answering the same question that Waze does. How do I get from here to wherever I want to go using public transportation? It's actually growing faster than Waze. And many other startups that I keep on building in order to make a bigger impact. This is what I want to do.
Yeah. So what do you think about what Google has done with your company?
Google, when they started, their vision was absolutely amazing. And I think that in general, I would say their M&A strategy is very, very good, because they buy companies that are successful and they do not interfere, and they allow them to become even more successful. So if your startup is going to be acquired by Google, this is actually a pretty good idea. I think that the general sense of do no evil is actually the right DNA for a company, and I like that.
In a way, I feel lucky because Get is kind of ultimate startup platform. We have resources, we have talent, and every time there's a new platform or a new product we want to build, there is the possibility to build it within the company. Something I never experienced in the past. I mean, being founder, you always have new ideas and you think about new companies. I'm now with Get for more than 8 years, and every year is a new kind of decade, because the market is changing, everything changing around us. And for example, now we're developing more mobility solutions for smart city, right? The expectation also changed since we launched the platform. It was all about how you move private people from A to B, and now it's all about utilization, efficiency, how we move more people in a more efficient way, how we actually solve the city problems and create the whole smart mobility solution for them from A to Z, meaning you have a private transportation, you have public transportation and delivery, and we have similar or cutting-edge tech that can solve that at scale. So you naturally say, okay, I have a platform and a place where with the teams we can solve new problems and create new products and new technologies. So it's not always the case. Usually startup is very specific. I think we've been really lucky to be in a platform that is very much developing, and cities and people are expecting more and more services to be helpful in the same manner. You click a button and you get solution. And today we, especially in Tel Aviv, speaking of parking and traffic, already today we offer all three platforms in commercial use. Should it be the shuttle, which is public transportation for companies and hopefully one day for private, and delivery and also private transportation. So excited and lucky.
Great. Yeah. And so knowing all of that, and knowing that data was a huge part of the attraction for Google and Waze, 5 years from now, do you see your company as a data play or a transportation play?
Wow, I really don't know to look that far. I'm always, we look with the team back 1 year ago and we say, how it's impossible to see. I really call every year a decade, especially now what's going on with transport and transportation and mobility and combination of those services. It's hard to see. I'm definitely will be playing a major role in the cities, being veins of those cities and actually providing the fabric that could be used in multiple ways and multiple modalities. But really, transportation, I didn't know that when we built a company that transportation is the second largest industry in the world. We spend combine $10 trillion on transport, on just moving from A to B. And I'm not talking about public transport, just private. Private cars is the second largest after real estate. We have about 1 billion cars on the road, and that does about 10,000 miles each at the cost of $1 per mile. So overall, $10 trillion spent as we speak. And indeed, it is such a huge space that it can provide value and efficiency. You can save both the city's people and business. So I cannot look that far, but that most probably will be our business.
So I live in San Francisco, and we have a scooter problem there. It's a venture capital bidding war. Scooter problem, yes, exactly. There are a bunch of companies that are essentially doing the same thing. They're trying to provide all these scooters that get people from point A to point B, but they've had regulatory issues, and a lot of people just argue that they're kind of useless and they're not actually solving any kind of traffic problem. Does Tel Aviv need scooters?
So, I think that in particular, you look at San Francisco and the Bay Area, and you are right, there is too much subsidies coming from venture capitals into mobility, and it doesn't make sense. So anything that you build here with subsidy is not scalable, unless subsidy is the solution. And there are some countries that are starting to basically say, you know what, public transportation should be free, right? Estonia just recently announced that their public transportation is going to be free. And in the reality is that governments and municipalities do subsidize a lot of things, right? In our mind, we have separations between public transportation and private transportation, right? So this is the responsibility of the municipality, and this is everyone can do whatever they want. Not exactly. They are using the roads that are part of the public sector, right?
Right.
And the private sector will be unable to solve traffic problems. The public sector will be able if they will have the courage to change regulations. Now, they're afraid of doing that, but in reality, just imagine, the mayor of Los Angeles doing something dramatic and reduce traffic jams. He will actually become the next president. If you can solve that, this is that dramatic, right? Now, if you think about developing countries versus developed countries, and you ask yourself, okay, so what is the difference in the economy? And you will figure out that there are actually 4 cornerstones, right? Communication, ability to make financial transactions, logistics, and mobility. And all the first 3 are actually moving forward. Mobility is going backward. And if we are not going to do something more dramatic in terms of establishing the right regulation to enable very efficient mobility system, then we will hate our life a decade from now.
Sure. And are scooters and bike sharing something that your company would ever invest in or develop?
I like how you started. Can you say it again? We have scooter problem.
A scooter problem.
Yeah, it's so much San Francisco. Right. I don't know about scooter problem. I do know about, as I said, real problem for cities is parking. Actually, people try to fight traffic in multiple ways, but eventually they just bring more cars and they're not solving it. Parking is the one that needs to be tackled, and for that you need to see it in a more broader scale. People come to work and they're using their cars, and that's what creates conjunction. So if you can create a situation where they can use different means, public transport on demand or personal one, and use trains, but in a way that will give them a freedom, like today with their own car, that's what help them to not to use their car, and that's what change really the face of the cities.
Sure. So would you say it's about getting or having there be more transportation options for people to get to point A to
on demand,
point
very
B?
convenient and affordable. One of the tipping points right now, most of the people move on demand, especially if you're a city like Tel Aviv, London, Moscow, New York. More probably you will be using services like Get on demand, but still the price point is still expensive. Usually on demand today costs about $2.5 per mile. Your own car, on average, you spend about $1 per mile. Now, why everyone expect AV so much? Because the idea, everyone believes that people will not own AVs, they will be more used on the platforms like Get, and therefore the price can be as low as 0.7. And that's a tipping point. So if you can imagine, today we already see people shifting from owning the car to on-demand at the pace of twofold, threefold year on year, still at the price point of $2.5. So should it go down below the cost of ownership for your own car, it will be a tipping point.
Sure.
So you know, when we're thinking of sharing economy and sharing transportation, then the key question is, what exactly do we share? The same platform that right now takes me to wherever I want to go and a minute later takes someone else, like Get is offering, or Uber? Or are we sharing the same car at the same time, right? So are we sharing seats within the car? And the first one is a matter of economic optimization. The second one is a matter of traffic jams optimization. Now, in general, all of us are making rational decisions and emotional decisions at the same time when it comes to choose mobility, right? And so in the rational sides, we will have speed, cost, and convenience, right? These are the three things that we care about when we choose, assuming that we know what are all the available options, assuming that we choose mobility. There is another emotional one, which is a matter of, so how do I look when I get off the bus, or what people think of me? And to a certain extent, I would say I don't care, but in reality, people do care. Now, if you can build a system that provides faster at a reasonable cost and maybe subsidized, maybe free, right, and more convenient than any other system, that system will prevail, right? That system will become the most significant system. And Dave is right. When you take the driver away out of the equation, you reduce the cost to the level that it doesn't make sense to own a car anymore. In fact, we will not be having cars.
Yeah.
And the next generation, they will not even drive. And the generation after that, if we will tell them that we used to drive cars ourselves, they will not believe us. But this is not good enough, because it's not going to address the problems of traffic jams. In fact, when you reduce the price, when you reduce the level of the price, then the demand will become dramatically higher. And the result is more traffic jams. If we don't deal with that, we will get stuck.
Would you ride in a flying car?
Can you ask the question again, sorry?
Would you ride in a flying car?
Here in Israel, it's too small anyhow.
Anywhere.
You know, and the reality is that in Israel, flying cars will be always illegal. But the reality is that, yes, why not? If it's, you know, the three elements, right? Speed, cost, convenience, right? If it's probably going to be much faster, right? Not sure about the cost yet.
What about you?
It's definitely fun. I don't know about safety, but definitely fun. Would love to see it. And again, the technology moves so fast. As I said, every year you look back and say how it was so different before. I don't know, in 5 years we might be using, like, no one will be driving the car. Today, the average age for getting a license, driving license in US, historically been always 16 years old. For the last 2-3 years, it's the first time the average age is about 20 and 19. Never been before. So it shows how people choosing the other means of transport for convenience, still at a cost that is 2.5 times more expensive. So imagine what will happen. To your point, Uri, that indeed, if people today not getting driving license in US because they have other forms of mobility, and the price will go down, and pooling, indeed, some version of utilization will tackle in. When I mentioned 0.7 per mile, it's when you're still alone in the car. But once you're actually pooling, it will be even cheaper. So you can create a means of transport that people, indeed, children of the audience will not have a driving license, I guess. Very much. And as I mentioned, my previous point about insurance being too high, because as humans, statistics will show that we actually more likely to be in an accident than the AV, therefore the insurance will be more expensive. So we might find ourselves having driving license just for fun and have some kind of racing tracks, and that's where, and you will be telling stories about you driving. Yeah, but that might be very much a very close future.
Got it. Well, that's all the time we have today. I could talk about it forever with both of you, but that's all. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.